I'm going to draw a line straight up, poorly, but I'm still going to draw a line straight up. And look how that fairly well, actually it's not too bad, matches up with that line right there in concern where those dots are. Okay, so that's at 1,057. 1,057. Mean for for freshman year GPA was 2.67. 2.67, probably about right there. Grab it, drag it across. Well, you know what? I mutilated that a little bit, but you can see that it's in generally the right place. 2.67. So this point right here, the mean point right there, 1,057, 2.67. The mean of x, the mean of y. Same as it is on this graph here. Okay, just to reiterate this. Here we go. We're going to pull this. Whoops. We're going to cancel the drawing right here. We're going to bring down the summary statistics here, and we're going to look at SAT versus freshman year GPA. We've got a correlation coefficient 0.816, and we're going to do the same thing here for freshman year GPA versus SAT, switching the axes, and we get a correlation coefficient of 0.816, and we're going to bring one more over here over to this side, Z of SAT versus Z of GPA. Changing the scale, we get a correlation coefficient of 0.816. So remembering that when you change the axes, switching the axes, correlation coefficient does not change. When you change the scale, whether you're going to Z-score, whether you're going like we did from salary in dollars to yen, whether you're talking about temperature in Fahrenheit versus temperature in Celsius, it doesn't matter. When you change the scale, whether it's on X, whether it's on Y, or whether it's on both, correlation does not change, because this person right here, wherever, let's see if we can find this person right here. This person right here, 3.25, who's this person right here? Does that tell us? All right. Their freshman year GPA was 3.3, their SAT was 1240. That's the relationship we're looking at, right there. If I change the scale, that relationship, this person still has a SAT score of 1240, freshman year 3.33. That's not going to change. If I change the scale, they're still going to be in some concert together because they're associated together. That's not going to change. There we go, chapter 7. Okay, one last thing I want to look at here as we're looking at correlation is, here I have a sample size of, I don't know, what is sample size? Sample size is 10, okay? And here's the correlation coefficient here. And if we look at this, what we're seeing is this tends to have a linear pattern. It's going negative if it's there at all. But I can change the correlation coefficient, okay, to become positive till we get to 1. I can take it down to 0. I can take it in a negative correlation, and we get this relationship, and it looks like, oh, look, it goes away completely. All right, so I can change that with a small sample size. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the sample size. Look, it's cellular division. It's a virus. I don't know. Okay, and this has a slightly negative correlation here is negative 0.09, which means it's almost 0. No linear relationship at all. But I'm going to grab this and I'm going to straighten it out. And as a correlation coefficient 0.78, it becomes more linear. As I take it down, it becomes less linear. So you can still see that relationship no matter what the sample size. Obviously, larger sample size, it's easier to see. Smaller sample size, it's not as easy to tell what the correlation coefficient is going to be and what that relationship is. Let's see, is that going to work? Do I want to save these changes? No, I don't think I do. All right, we're going to look at one more thing here. I'm hoping off the screen here because, you know, sometimes you just don't like being on TV all that often. It's hard being famous all the time. And, okay, so what I have here is I have a graph. I've got a data set here, and I've got the x value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the y value is 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And there's not a lot of data pieces here, but here is the raw data, and here is the mean in y and the mean in x, and here is the z-scores. So this is the exact same relationship that we saw last time with the SAT and the freshman year GK. It's the exact same graph, and the correlation coefficient is 0.8928. And I've only got one because the correlation coefficient is going to be the same. But notice what's going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of these pieces, okay? Let's grab this one right here. And as I start to move it, really, as I start to move, hello, come with me. It's because I got to grab it over here. Durr. Okay, as I start to grab this piece of data and move it out of the way, it's becoming a less centric and less part of the data set as a whole as we know it. So it's becoming less part of the linear group. And my correlation coefficient is now at 0.8. So I'm going to see if I can squeeze in on this side over here. And I'm going to grab this piece of data again, or I'll grab a piece of data again, and I'm going to drag it down in this direction. Now my correlation, now it's way out here, so what we have here is my original, I don't know what it was originally, but now it's really not part of the data set anymore. It doesn't look like it follows the trend. And over here you can see that it's not part of the trend. And the correlation is 0.5498. So what we've done with this one piece, we've greatly affected the correlation coefficient. And if I continue to drag this out, then it becomes more and more of what looks like it's going to be an outlier. But technically, it's not an outlier because it's not beyond 3 standard deviations from the mean. Here's 2 standard deviations along x. Here's negative 1.5 standard deviations along y. It's still not technically an outlier, but it is certainly affecting the distribution. If I were going to look at this on x, I'd probably say that it doesn't seem to be skewed, but on y it seems to be skewed. But my correlation coefficient is now 0.18. So that one piece of data drastically affects the correlation coefficient, and it can. One piece can do that. So if I was reporting this data, what I should be saying is, because you cannot just eliminate a piece of data. You can't do it. I should say, here is my correlation coefficient with this entire data set. My correlation coefficient is 0.18181887. But what I could do is I could, if I eliminated this piece of data, if I eliminated this piece of data, which may be a miscalculation, but I can't guarantee that, I could report this data set without that as well and say, if this piece of information wasn't there, then my correlation coefficient would be whatever value that's going to be. What is that doing? That's giving you those brownie points. When you're taking the AP test and they're looking at the question as a whole, when you have that extraordinary answer, which is that answer right there, when you say, here it is with it, and if I remove it, I get this. That's the extraordinary answer. That's a good boy. Good boy, Tommy. Tommy's a good boy. That helps you later on, because as the holistic question grading goes, when you have outstanding for part of the question and pretty good for another part of the question, that's going to be the holistic grading. It's going to help you. So, but again, as always, be careful that you're not shooting yourself in the foot. Just don't start making up stuff and write anything that you can see either. You don't want too much information. But this is one of those points where you can sit there and say, report it, but then if this piece wasn't there, I could also say this, and that would be a great answer. Okay, we're done with chapter 7.